All right, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Excited to have you back with us. And man, Schlegs, we had a phenomenal show yesterday with AJ. A lot of love coming through. Very entertaining. A lot of folks enjoyed seeing that. So we'll see if we can get him on here on a weekly basis or a semi-weekly basis. He's got a lot of stuff going on, but a huge show for you today. We've got Joshua Perry going to be joining in the second and third segments again. Ben Stevens from Sports Grid Radio is going to join with us a little bit after 1. He is one of the best college gambling experts you will find. Does a great job. I've been talking to him on SiriusXM for years, and so he's got a ton of news and nuggets that he'll be able to give to you and throw at you. So that's going to be a huge deal for us. So pretty excited. Starting off, Schlegs, it's a Thursday. It's a big can of polish day. You start putting on everything during the season. You got Bloody Tuesdays, big install day. A lot on Wednesday. Thursdays, kind of red zone, short yardage, special situation, clean up any third down stuff from Wednesday and kind of move forward. Is that typically how the week goes?
Yeah, first off, it was great to have AJ on. And I tell people this all the time. I'm at the farm. I'm doing farm hillbilly stuff, which I like to do. And I will randomly see a hawk. And I think that's kind of AJ's avatar, just check it out on people. I just, boom, there he is right there. And hey, every time I see it, I wave at him like, hey, what's up, AJ? Every single time. Great to have him on the show. Talking about practice, I actually went up there yesterday. One of our good friends, Ryan Stamper, who's still with the Jaguars.
I saw Stamp today. He was back in when I was leaving.
He was back in, came over to the Armory, got a little bumpy time, and I just wanted to catch up with him and see the guys and just kind of watch practice. And it was a great practice, man, hard practice. And that you're right, Bob. That's what the week looks like. Tuesdays. And again, if you're in the NFL, if you're thinking about the NFL schedule, it's just a day later, right? It's because they play on Sunday. So it's a day later. But that being said, Tuesday, really hard physical practice. Wednesday is when you're going to touch those high speed distance. And again, as a sports performance coach, and you're looking at what guys are doing during the week, I don't need guys just running deep balls all freaking week, right? You save that for the game, but you still got to touch the quality. That's kind of what you're getting on that Wednesday. Thursday in the league, you call it Fast Fridays. Thursdays in college, that's still Fast Thursdays, right? Because you want it to be cleaned up. You want it to be fast. And again, guys got to remember this too. And anybody that coaches at any level, right? As you progress, progressive overload in the weight room, volume is the killer as you go out throughout the season. Not necessarily right now, but it will catch up to you. So the volume of your practice, the time on the field, Tuesdays it's more, Wednesdays it's a little less, Thursday it's less, to be able to get you recovered and ramped up so you're at max capacity on Saturdays. That's what they're constantly thinking about. That's how you want your Thursday to be. Fast execution, short time on the field, get back into the meeting rooms, watch the film, out, get ready for best Fridays in football at Ohio State.
You're saying when I was in school, we called it Thirsty Thursday, Schlegs, and we called it that for the Thursday evening after practice. We didn't have any post-practice meetings, get together as a team, captain's meeting, GTFO. Sometimes I go watch my brothers play when they were freshmen in high school or in junior high. And then, sometimes I remember my sophomore year, I'd get my labs together for my CS&E class. It was our computer systems and modeling. I'd do my pre-lab with a couple of brewskis beside me and then get ready to kind of go out and cruise out and have a good time, especially once the students get on campus. Is that not part of the ritual anymore?
I would say, here's the thing about these guys. And these guys are just ball. And Bob, you probably know better, but I just see guys handling their business at practice. So I don't know about Thirsty Thursdays. I never really liked to drink during the season because I couldn't control myself. So I just was away from that. But these guys, man, they are ball all the time. I left practice, I'm saying what's up. And there is an abundance of dudes still on the field, just working on skills, right? I was just this is great. I was keep stacking vertical, count sideways, man. I see you. So it was just fun to watch that. And I really do believe that they're just super engaged, love football, love being around each other.
They do. And it's tremendous. Yeah. I was making a kind of a joke to it, Schlegs, because
I know you were.
Well, because these guys are way more serious than we ever were. They're all ball all the time. They're right now, they do heat charts on injuries, post day game one, post 1 day game, post 2 days game. And the guys are so locked in and so in tune to getting their workouts in, taking care of their bodies. It's a far different era and a far different dynamic. than what we were ever used
to. We had to go in and break in to get protein shakes. Remember that, guys? We're talking about when Bob and I played, it was illegal to give us peanut butter on a bagel.
Yeah.
Right. The times have changed in the last 20 years and for the better. But, I would say kudos to Ryan, kudos to Coach Mick and the staff and the training room and the nutritionists. Okay, they do a great job of educating these guys as to what they need.
You can put people's names on it, man. Willa does a great job with nutrition. Sean Barnhouse, Tyler Solo. Stu's doing a great job. We barely see Doug anymore. He's administration now, but they really. I make sure I tell when we talk to recruits when they come through here, I'm like, the weight program is phenomenal. And Mick does a great job with that. Coaching's tremendous. The one thing that Ohio State has that is better here than, I played in a number of NFL teams. The only place that was elite at was really at Miami was pretty good, but New England. And so we brought in Sean Barnhouse, who was an undergrad at Ohio State, and Adam Stewart, who we call Dr. Stu, the PT, who was also an undergrad. And they worked as student trainers at Ohio State, went to the NFL, interned, worked in New England, got their graduate degrees, other places, came back. And now those guys are doing a great job here. And they brought that whole methodology with to Ohio State. And so the recovery, the sports performance, all of those things being married together is such a big piece of it. And it's so wildly impressive. And it was good at the beginning when Urban got here, but it's gotten better and better and better. And like you always talked about, blending the toughness, because that's one thing Ryan has talked about. Tough. They've got to be tough. They've got to be tough. Being talented is one thing. The most talented teams don't always win. It's the toughest teams. But then also the most important ability is availability. So you can't get your guys hurt. And so trying to balance that, we're like, hey, let's go really hard. Let's grind. But also make sure that you're not going to go pop a hammy. You don't have soft tissue injuries that's going to inhibit your ability to play on the field.
Yeah, 100%, Bob. And we talk about it, with Urban, greatest is the accumulation of great days. The only way you can have a great day is to be out on the field. And I think they do a phenomenal job. And that's the thing, right? A lot of even NFL organizations, to your point, they're very siloed. And that's also college football, but I think college football is ahead of it because they have to communicate. PT, AT, SC, nutrition, it all plays a role, but the coaching staff understands the importance of all those roles. And Mick is a great communicator to all the coaches, and that's why it really works.
Well, it was once said, Schlegs, that everybody gets your roll on. And I don't know if that was ROL, ROLL. It's whatever you want it to be. But I do know this. We got our guy Joshua Perry, NBC, Big Ten Desk. He's going to be out there Saturday night. So make sure you're tuned to him. He's going to join us and give us some breakdown, talk a little college football, a little Buckeyes, a little everything. Stay locked in here on Bobby Carpenter's show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages, because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, welcome back into the show, and I want to remind you to protect what matters most. That's your grill, that's your head, that's your brain. With X-Sports carbon fiber mouth guards, the world's safest mouth guard is designed for all ages. It's endorsed by my guy, Mr. Anthony Schlegel, who's right over there, and endorsed by the Bobby Carpenter Show. If you've got a mug that's as rough as his, you need to protect it all you can. So check them out. Go to xsportsguards.com/pages/Bobby. Save 15%, get protected today. Now, we're welcoming our guy, Mr. Joshua Perry, NBC desk. He's got a new podcast that he's going to be releasing. How's that going for you, Joshua?
Just recorded a new episode today. It'll be dropping later in the day. Went through, some of the surprises from week one, did a great preview of week two as well. So things are going well. I'm excited, man. It was like last week, it felt like you're getting ready for the first day of school. You got the jitters. I had my outfit all laid out. But the difference with college football is as the season goes on, the weeks start to pile up. I still have the jitters. I'm still laying out my outfit, getting ready to go. So it's awesome.
So it's you and Nicole Auerbach. Where can we find it? If folks want to get a hold of it, what's the name of it? Give us all the details.
The name is Rushing the Field. You can find us on NBCsports.com. We've got a YouTube as well, and then anywhere you get your podcast. So Apple, Spotify, all the big platforms. Give it a listen and let us know what you think. We're also going to try to incorporate some viewer questions in there as well. So let us know some thoughts, questions you have throughout the season.
Yeah, just as long as you're not rushing the field during the game, no trespassing, as we know. And here's the thing, Joshua. So you're already talking about surprises. Let's eliminate Florida State. Let's eliminate Florida. Biggest good surprise. I like the good things. Biggest good surprise that you were talking about week one.
Penn State can throw the football down the field, finally. I think that was a welcome surprise for a lot of us who watch Big Ten football. The reality is Drew Aller's starting to look like the quarterback who people said that he could be. And the biggest difference for me was he started to play with some emotion on Saturday. He was excited when things were going well. He was getting after his teammates after the turnover, but he looks like a confident quarterback. Part of the reason why is what they do on offense in terms of variety. They're showing different personnel groupings. They're showing different formations. They use different shifts and motions. And ultimately, that's put them in a better spot to make plays. I still think their run game needs a little bit of help. But Penn State, finally in 12-team playoff era, looks like a team that should be competitive at the end of the year, ultimately playing the postseason.
So with that, you played some of those very talented Penn State teams. Some of the, obviously, early in your career, Bill O'Brien, then early in James Franklin's career. And it seemed like they always had one elite receiver. You look at Allen Robinson that was there. And I remember watching him. And I don't know if you were part of that beatdown or not, Joshua. And was that in 15 that we played them at home, I want to say? Where,
yes.
We smoked them. They were a pretty good team. But he looked like an NFL guy. And I remember he had a long catch and run. I'm like, okay, their team might be just good, but he's really good. John Dotson, fairly similar vein. Do you feel like, some of these guys that they have right now are equal to that? They're closer on the same level that can stretch the field. They had 2 passes over 50 yards. Is that something you think that'll be integrated in throughout the season?
I don't know if they have a guy like that just from a giftedness standpoint, but I think that the combination of the scheme and some of the talent that those guys do have allows them to get open like that. I think that this is going to be more of a scheme-dependent approach to get those guys open downfield. But the idea that the cupboard is completely bare and that they don't have any guys that can make plays, I think that was dispelled on Saturday. So they've got to continue to get better at that position. I know James Franklin has talked about it all offseason. But if they can have somebody emerge as a go-to, I think that benefits them. In terms of having somebody who we think is going to be like a standout NFL guy, I'm not necessarily seeing it.
Hey, Joshua, one team that I was really impressed with, and again, I know it's early in the season, but you're playing an LSU team ranked top 15. USC definitely looked apart, and then you compared them to what Oregon did versus Idaho. Give me your take on USC and how you think they're going to fare in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they're starting to get into that conversation as one of the top teams. Coming in, I think a lot of us had Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan as kind of the top 4 in the Big Ten. Where you want to put Iowa and everybody after that was kind of up to you. I think USC is probably in that top 4 conversation, especially with what we've seen out of Michigan, and especially if they don't win on Saturday. We're looking at USC as the needle kind of being up. I thought Miller Moss played a pretty good game. There were a lot of batted balls, which was an interesting thing to see there. And I don't know if that was just LSU in the way that they developed their rush plan, a point of emphasis in the offseason, or if he's got an issue kind of throwing through some windows at the line of scrimmage. I'll be looking at that. Defensively, much, much better, though. And it wasn't the fact that they were getting every stop or it was like a super stingy defense. They got timely stops, and they looked much better in space when it came to tackling and taking angles. And I think that's going to be the big thing for them is with the offense probably being one of the top in the country by the end of the year. They just need to be able to get off the field in a timely fashion.
Josh, do you think Iowa has the ability to kind of creep into that conversation there in that fringe top tier of the Big Ten. Offense looked a lot better than what we've seen.
Yeah, I'm in wait and see mode. I feel like that could be fool's gold. And I know they did some things they hadn't done all last year, so I'll give them credit where credit's due. I'm going to slow play the Iowa offense taking a big step this year. Their defense looked like they typically do, and so I think that's what they're going to hang their hat on. I look at Iowa's schedule, though, and that's probably the biggest beneficiary for them is the idea that they got a pretty favorable schedule, and I wouldn't be shocked if they're at the end of November in the conversation about making a 12-team playoff just based off of that alone. But in terms of their offense taking this huge step in the offseason, I'm going to press pause on that one and wait a little bit.
So, hey, we got a big matchup this week. College game days there. Number 3 Texas at number 10 Michigan. You know, it looks a lot different when you don't have anybody standing right next to the defensive coordinator. And, you know, Fresno State took them all the way down. Like, they had to get a pick 6 to actually seal that game, win 30-10.
Real quick on that pick 6, it looked like there was a Connor Stallions out there.
Yeah.
Will Johnson, he was moving toward the line of scrimmage before the ball was even snapped on that one. And I'm not trying to take anything away from his game because everybody knows he's one of the best players in the country. But it was wild. Like, he just knew that they were getting ready to throw that screen, and he took that thing to the crib.
Well, I think sometimes that's just their anticipation, right? And that's
honestly,
that's the one thing I hated about the entire Connor Stallions documentary and stuff is like it just how it negatively impacted the players because we automatically think of cheating. Well, they still had to execute. And there's a lot of things right that they always run this play like this is their go-to play. They've hit it a couple times. I'm jumping that route. Like I'm going to go make that money on that play, right? And you automatically go back and think, well, did he get a tip? No, it's just probably that guy watching film like I've seen it before.
Yeah, he got
a tip in the film room. The game. Right.
Yeah, his coach laid out a good game plan. That's the tip.
Right. Yeah, that's the tip. Well, tell me about their because they got quarterback. Of course, Bob. Of course. Hey, but like they got a quarterback issue right now, and they got a running game issue going into this Texas game. And Texas is able to use the entire field. That's really the matchup. Texas offense versus Michigan's defense. But based on what Michigan did offensively, like that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, and we asked during the offseason, I think this game will kind of tell us how far can Michigan's defense take them this year. This will be the litmus test for that. You mentioned, it looks different without Connor Stallions. Like the reality is it looks different without 44 seniors, super veteran guys. It looks different without a first-round quarterback, and that's what Michigan is up against right now. Their offensive line is not the same. And we heard all offseason, these guys got a ton of reps last year. They'll be fine. It's not the same. They couldn't get push. They couldn't open up the creases with consistency. They had to lean on them up until the very end of the game to get that ground game going. That's not something that we really saw out of Michigan last year. The quarterback situation, they got a conundrum there. And it's funny because we heard kind of in the lead up to the game, we were talking to the staff that it was probably going to be Davis Warren. They kept saying, well, he's the guy who's most like JJ. But they didn't try to throw it down the field. And the first time they did, he threw an interception. They go to 𝗟𝗓𝗓, and we know what kind of athlete he is. He threw the short touchdown pass. His second pass attempt of the game, which he was 1 for 2, by the way, it was on a rollout sub-boot, and he completely dirted it to the flat on the way to the tight end or whoever. It's like it was bad. That it's not that good. And they don't have the type of wide receivers that I think can elevate a quarterback, right? Like we looked at Marvin Harrison Jr. all last year. Throw it in the vicinity, and he's going to make a play. They don't have a guy like that. And so I do think there are some real challenges on offense. The good thing for them, Texas secondary was not good last year. I don't know how much they improved this offseason. If they're not a great secondary, maybe Michigan can hit a couple of plays, but otherwise it's going to be a long day on offense.
Yeah, they got to figure something out with that quarterback situation because, like you said, Joshua, it seems like they've wanted to go to 𝗟𝗓𝗓 the whole time. And yet, from what I've heard up there, his bad is bad. And it's multi-interception practice. And I think they're still trying to lean in on the run game, lean in on the defense enough. Hopefully that'll ultimately carry them. We'll see if they can hold up against a Texas team that's most likely going to score some points. I just worry that game could end up a little bit like what we saw Georgia-Clemson, where once the dam breaks on defense, your guys are gassed. You can't keep putting them back on the field.
Bob, I know we got to get out of here. That's the one thing that I always said this offseason is there's going to come a point because they don't have the depth on defense as well that they did a year ago, where those guys are playing a ton of reps. They start getting banged up, and now it just looks like a different team because they're not right on defense.
Oh, they got some studs out there. We know Johnson, Graham up front. They're really good. All right, we're going to put a pin in this, come back with Joshua because I wanted to talk to him about Buckeyes, what he saw against Akron, and then what he sees from this team moving forward, what they need to do against the Western Michigan Broncos. Coming up next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
It's just, that's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yep.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schleich. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Still here with our guy, Joshua Perry. You can see him on the NBC desk, doing a great job across a bunch of multimedia platforms. All right, Joshua, your thoughts kind of coming out of Akron and top performers, what you thought they did well, and was the performance that you saw expected?
It was a slow start. And last year, there were some slow starts in there. I need this team to figure out a way to jump on, especially the teams that you're much better than, jump on them early. And I think that benefits them by the end of the year. You get the starters out and get some more depth in there a little bit earlier on. Those guys can get legit reps out on the field. All that said, the more I watch that game, the offensive line certainly needs to continue to improve. Bobby, you and I talked about that all summer long. I didn't think it was as bad as I initially believed when I watched the TV copy, but certainly a lot of room for improvement. The other thing for me is in the run game, those wide receivers have to get more engaged when it comes to blocking, right? Like it's the thing that I think is really missing in terms of those explosive plays, especially when they want to go out to the edges. And when I was at Ohio State, Urban, it was a non-negotiable. If you didn't block, you weren't playing. We weren't throwing you the ball. Evan Spencer, didn't catch a ton of balls. That dude was locking people up when it came to blocking on the perimeter, and that's why the run game was so effective. So I think that's something that needs to be hammered home. I love the defensive performance overall for these guys. I think they're going to be one of the top units in the country, and we got to see some depth making plays on that side of the ball too, which really got me excited for this defense. So it was a solid start, right? Like they ended up blowing that game out. I think they controlled it for the whole thing. It's just when you get down to thinking about a championship team, we nitpick and things have to look a certain way all the time. And it just didn't always look that way.
Well, the good thing too is that they know that, right? It's one thing to say, oh, we did it. We had a great game. And yeah, we came out slow, but they know they need to execute better. And again, the one drop that JJ had early in the game, right? First time in Ohio Stadium, he dropped it. Chris Carter, he tweeted back, yeah, guess what? My first play drop, right? That was probably going to go to the house, And then Emeka's touchdown, right? Completely changes the dynamic of what we're seeing there. I agree with you on the offensive line. I think they'll get that picked back up. Donnie wasn't in there this week. It was good to get Austin some extra reps. But tell me, that defense, how did it make you feel when you got to see those guys play fast, hard, and violent? That was one of the most violent performances that I've seen from a defense, and they enjoyed it, especially when you go back last year and they only had 11 turnovers. This game they had 3 with 2 touchdowns.
It's a big deal, man. And it's been the progression of this defense. So year one under Jim Knowles, it's like we got to eliminate the big play, which they did for most of that season. Michigan game got away from them. We all know how that went. Then year 2, it's like, okay, we got to start getting more aggressive, and we're going to become one of the best units. And they did that. But it was a team that didn't have a ton of TFLs, a team that didn't have a ton of sacks, and they didn't take the football away a ton last year. And so to me, the natural progression is we're going to create negative plays, right? Like we're going to get people behind the sticks, and we're going to take our opportunities when it comes to taking the football away. And they did just that. And I feel bad for the Akron quarterback because, and honestly, I think they should have taken him out the game. Joe Moorhead should have been like, listen, we got a max season to worry about. We can't have you out here getting killed. That dude was grabbing his ribs the whole day. But that's what I want to see out of an Ohio State defense, like tattoo the quarterback. And then when the opportunity comes, step in front of a football. And it's not good enough to just get the interception. Like, let's go see if we can score with that thing. And to your point, did it twice. I thought it was really good. And it's living up to the preseason hype of can be the top defense in the country.
About the last minute or so here, Joshua. Western Michigan coming up, 7:30 night at the Shoe. What do you want to see?
Yeah, it's a Western team that played Wisconsin tough in week 1. So, you got to take them seriously with that. I mentioned it, but fast start, I think, is really important for this Ohio State team. And I'd like to see that run game be more of a feature. And I thought Trey had some good runs. Quinshawn just couldn't really break one. I want to see that happen. But ultimately, bring that same defense. I like the way the pass game looked against Akron. So give me that same pass game, but let's run the ball a little bit better and then ultimately fast start in this game.
Absolutely. Well done, Joshua. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. One of the best. Make sure you lock in. Tune in to Joshua. All right, coming up next, we've got our headlines here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, thank you for tuning in to the Bobby Carpenter Show. We really appreciate it. Listen, regardless of how you're watching, whether you're watching online, YouTube, Bally's, whatever it is, please like, subscribe, leave comments. We love the comments a lot from AJ's show yesterday. We'll get into some of those here today and tomorrow. I want to remind you, Headlines is brought to you by our friends over at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health, they offer personalized treatment plans to help people feel better, whether you're struggling with weight loss, muscle loss, poor sleep. They can help you with all of it. They'll provide expert guidance to help you get to be feeling the best version of yourself. They've got Ohio covered, Cleveland, Columbus, places in Indy, Chicago. I know that's not Ohio, but if you're anywhere, they got it you taken care of. Go to affinitywholehealth.com to check them out for your free consult. That's affinitywholehealth.com. All right, Joe Moorhead, long coaching career. Guy coached at Oregon a number of years back. I think he said, when Ohio State, when they beat Ohio State in that 2021 game, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. He coached, he was offensive coordinator at Penn State, gave Ohio State troubles then. All right, so we can throw this up here. This clip about him. He said, having coached against the 2019 LSU team, and I took my son to see Michigan last spring over a recruiting visit. I know a team that can play for a national championship, and it looks like this team can play for a national championship. It's a guy who's been around a lot, Schleich. He's seen some of the best. When they say that kind of unsolicited, unprompted, I mean, obviously he's defending a little bit the fact that he got beat, by almost 50, but I think you wouldn't say that unsolicited unless you felt like you might be playing a team that could be in the national championship game.
And he's also in the great state of Ohio. And, my thing is this, like, he sees everything that we see at practice. He's saying the same thing that I hear from scouts. He's saying exactly what they are. They're a team because they're veteran led. They play fast, hard, and violent. They have the talent to be able to make a deep run and play for a national championship. And he's just articulating everything that everybody else is saying, though he got to see it live and in person with the guys that he coaches on a day in and day out basis. So kudos to him for saying it. We appreciate it, but you still got to go out there and execute versus Western Michigan.
Absolutely. Shuggs, I also want to throw this out here because it was pretty impressive. Obviously, Joe Moore had a front row seat. I was surprised that he left, Finley in as long as he did. I mean, usually guys just try to bleed the clock at the end of the game. Once you realize that, hey, you're putting your guys in harm's way, you don't want to necessarily see them get beaten up anymore. You've got a whole season to play after this. So, I mean, I respect Joe Moorhead. He's a very good offensive coordinator. Like I said, Penn State, he was at Oregon. He coached against LSU, I think, when he was at Mississippi State, I believe, and now the head coach at Akron and trying to get that program turned around. All right, got a big treat for us on Thursdays this year. Guy who I've worked with for a number of years. He's one of the best. He's a Big Ten guy. He's a Rutgers guy. He's a Nebraska guy. He's excited about the Big Ten and what they can provide. Ben Stevens, Sports Grid Radio, joins us next for all the betting tips and lines you need to know here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
They're off in the Kentucky Derby as Authentic takes them around the far turn. Tis the Laws making his move now, and they're into the stretch. These two stride for stride. Authentic, tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, welcome back into the show, and now pleased to welcome in my guy, Ben Stevens, Sports Grid Radio. You can hear me over there on XM, doing a great job. And Ben, before we get into it, I saw you were taking a run in New York. People are saying, go Nebraska. I mean, that had to make you feel good.
Bobby, you would be surprised how often it happens. I'll just be taking a jog on a lovely afternoon in New York City. Even when it gets a little bit colder, I'll be wearing my Nebraska hat that I bought back in my days working and covering the Huskers in Omaha. It's the one that Mike Riley used to don on the sidelines, and it inspires the need to call out to me. It happens like once every 2-3 months. I never know when it's going to happen. It is always something, and obviously with the fervor and the excitement that the Cornhuskers feel entering this huge matchup on Saturday night against Colorado, somebody had to shout out that they're liking what they see out of NU, so I had to let the people know on Twitter.
So we got, man, obviously great to talk to you. I love the fact that you're just up there representing Nebraska. And Matt Rule's done some good things. You got a new quarterback, freshman quarterback. They look really good. You got Colorado coming to town. And this is the stuff I'm interested in because you're looking at these lines. And we got some really interesting lines in the Big Ten right now. So you got Nebraska, was it -7.5? Colorado coming in to Lincoln. First off, Lincoln is a great place to watch a game. If you're a Big Ten fan and you had experienced the love that Nebraska has for Cornhusker football, like you should definitely go there. But talk a little bit about that game.
Yeah, it's what really kind of indoctrined me into my love for the Big Ten, really kind of inspired that passion in college football when I was working at the CBS affiliate in Omaha, to be inside Memorial Stadium, to see the sea of red, 92,000 plus each and every Saturday. The biggest thing in the state of Nebraska each and every Saturday is what the Cornhuskers do on the football field. So when you think about this game, it's not just the 2024 version or what happened a season ago. It's a rivalry that means a lot to these two programs and these two fan bases. 73 all-time meetings is what is at stake on Saturday. They met every year from 1948 until 2010. And since 2018, the last 3 games, Colorado has emerged victorious. CU winning last year in Deion Sanders' home debut in Boulder, 36-14. If you guys remember from the spread perspective, trying to quantify some spread math, some numbers, it was actually Nebraska that entered that week 2 matchup earlier in the summer. The early look-ahead lines with the optimism to what the Buffs might do in year number 1 of the Prime era. Nebraska was a 7.5-point favorite. Colorado goes on the road, upsets TCU, winning outright as a 3-touchdown underdog, and they closed as a 2.5-point favorite against the Huskers. And they made real good on that number, winning by 22, 36-14. Shedeur Sanders throwing for close to 400 yards, a Nebraska team that turned it over 4 times against the Buffs. But they did get to Shedeur Sanders 7 times. He was sacked 7 times by Nebraska. And again, that's really my key for Saturday as well, that I think dictates the outcome. I don't think we saw the Buffs do anything on Thursday night to open up week number 1 against North Dakota State that was all that different than what we saw in 2023. The star power is going to shine. It's going to be tough to limit Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter each and every week for Colorado. But domination in the trenches is what I give the edge to for Nebraska here. Keep an eye on Emmett Johnson. When the props come out for Nebraska's leading rusher against UTEP, keep an eye on that number. And if Dylan Raiola, in really the first huge and monumental game of what Nebraska fans are hoping is many during his career in Lincoln, if he can keep his composure, not turn it over like Jeff Sims did last year in Boulder, I think Nebraska wins and wins comfortably.
Nice. So you're laying that all the way. Lay it all day is what we're saying?
I think so. I would lay the 7.5. And I would also look, Bobby, under 58.5. Last year's total was 56.5. It stayed well under. I know Colorado's offense is incredibly potent, as we saw against North Dakota State, but Nebraska's secondary is so much better than that of the Bison. We're North Dakota State, South Dakota State, the best FCS programs have a chance to even compete with FBS teams is in the interior, trying to establish the run, trying to own the line of scrimmage. We saw the Bison do that. South Dakota State struggling to do that against Oklahoma State, but the Pokes have a really, really great front on either side of the football. What Nebraska has is the elevation that Colorado did not experience against North Dakota State. A great defensive line. Ty Robinson factored in last year, getting after Shedeur Sanders, and I think one of the best corners in all of the Big Ten, and Tommy Hill. He will be tasked with defending either Travis Hunter or Jimmy Horn. It's a potent attack. You're not going to hold Shedeur to 165 yards, but if you can limit what Colorado does in terms of their scoring output, I focus on Nebraska defensively, establishing that run, and Dylan Raiola just playing clean football. I give the edge to the Huskers.
All right, we got a big rivalry game, interconference rivalry, just adjacent there to Nebraska. You got Matt Campbell and the Cyclones coming in, battling for the Cyhawk. I learned this week, Ben, that Iowa State has never beaten a ranked Iowa team in Kinnick Stadium. Slight favorite for the Hawkeyes with that new revamped passing attack. How are we feeling about that?
Yeah, I think it's the right side, Bobby. When you look at Iowa laying 3 right now, the Cyclones struggling last week in their opener against North Dakota. UND actually had 38 minutes or close to it of time of possession. Iowa State only had 22. They had a couple of quick strikes. Rocco Becht has his 2 best playmakers back there on the outside. Jaden Higgins had a touchdown and 88 yards. Jalen Knoll, who might be one of the best wide receivers in the Big 12, 135 yards and a receiving score as well. Abu Sama, though, not great on the ground for Iowa State. And again, that's where the FCS teams have a better chance of competing with the FBS programs. Iowa's going to be great on both sides of the football from the line of scrimmage perspective. And if the second half offense, albeit against Illinois State, is a peak of just improvement for the Hawks, Bobby, not saying they are going to average 40 points per game or rack up 490 plus yards each and every game. I've actually dove into the stats. Iowa right now, 40th in the country in terms of total offense. The last time Iowa ranked inside the top 40 in total offense for a season was way back in 2006. I'm not saying Iowa's going to live there all season long throughout 2024, but if they can be good on that side of the football, we know how good the defense is going to be. Yet another shutout under Phil Parker, the best defensive coordinator in the country. 8 shutouts for Iowa, the second most at the FBS level since 2018, only trailing Georgia, who has 9. Again, Bobby, you know my thoughts on this Iowa team, how stacked they're going to be defensively. I do think Iowa State will put up some points. They're not going to be blanked, but I don't think it's enough to win outright in Kinnick or even cover as a 3-point dog. 35.5 the total. Just must remark, it's the second lowest we have ever seen in Cyhawk game history. Last year, 34.5 was the lowest we had seen, and it did stay under. I would expect a 21-17, 21-14 type of football game flirting with that total, but I would lay it with Iowa.
All right, so we got a huge one in the big house. Texas, number 3, looked really good week 1. Michigan barely beating Fresno State. I mean, barely, but 30-10, way closer, going deep. And then you saw the quarterback play. And we've seen this line change dramatically from where it was a week ago to where it is now. What do you got on this game?
Yeah, it has been crazy to see the line movement here. When this line opened up during the summer months, it was Texas laying 3.5 on the road in the Big House. That's intriguing enough for a team to be a more than field goal road favorite in Ann Arbor, where Michigan has won now 23 consecutive home games against the reigning national title winners. Of course, it's the turnover in the roster and the coaching staff for Michigan, and still very high expectations for Steve Sarkisian and Texas. But now to see that work north of a touchdown is ridiculous. I talk about this with Bobby and Jacob Hester all the time on the radio, just from a numbers perspective, pure handicapping, throw the football aside, your thoughts on these two teams, how they match up, whatever it might be. The fact that Texas is now a 7.5-point favorite north of a touchdown in Ann Arbor with a total of 42.5. If the numbers are correct, they could not be, right? We could see each team put up 35 points in this game, and that will determine what absolutely happens with the spread. But if the numbers are correct and it stays around 42 points, that's 6 touchdowns in this game scored, very difficult for Texas to cover then by more than a touchdown if the scoring is at a premium. And both of these defenses are still incredibly good. Texas blanking Colorado State last week. I thought CSU was going to put up some points. That did not happen. Texas, one of 3 programs last week to shut out an FBS foe, along with Alabama and Kentucky. When you look at the other side for Michigan, until they figure out the quarterback situation, they're going to be good on the defensive side of the football. We saw Will Johnson play hero to ice that game away late in the fourth quarter, the 86-yard INT return to seal the deal for Michigan. My thought in this game is that we're going to see more of Alex Orji take over kind of the quarterback role for Davis Warren. Michigan is going to establish things on the ground. It's going to be difficult, though, against a really good Longhorns front seven that really kind of replicates some of the things that we saw from a year ago. Did allow more than 100 yards last week, and they do have to replace both Byron Murphy and Devondre Sweat, but Alfred Collins is that guy. Guys, last year, Texas, 4th best rushing defense in the country, less than 81 yards per game. That, to me, is the difference that will decide the outcome. I don't know if Michigan wins and makes it 24 consecutive home victories for the Maize and Blue. I do think the Wolverines, though, keep this game within that 7.5-point spread just based on points being at a premium.
All right. I like it. Low-scoring game, Ben. I mean, you're one of the few people I heard, because I'm starting to feel like this could go a little Clemson, Georgia-esque, and I don't want to see it get stretched like that with a really good defense in Michigan in the second half. The night slate for the Big Ten, Boise, going to Oregon, undefeated against the Ducks, 3-0. I believe the most recent was the LeGarrette Blount situation with Chip Kelly on the sideline. How do we feel about this matchup after Oregon struggling in week 1?
Yeah, I'm going to look at this game, and I'm going to think we see some points, Bobby, going through that total in the low 60s. If you look at what happened last week, I think there's been the overreaction on Oregon's side of things. There's no doubt it was a poor performance against an Idaho team that, again, could rival or have an opportunity to go deep into the FCS postseason, maybe contend for a national championship, an Idaho team that had won 9 games each of the past 2 seasons. It does not excuse Oregon only winning by 10 points and having only a 3-point lead early in the fourth quarter against the Vandals, but I'm not the AP poll where I'm going to drop Oregon 4 spots thinking they have no shot of being a team that we expected them to be this year and contend for a Big Ten title in their first season. It was a really strange game. You look at the drive charts, you watch what happened, you try to match it up with the stats. Dillon Gabriel threw the ball 49 times, 380 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 3 times against Idaho, which is crazy because the Ducks gave up only 5 total sacks in the entirety of the 2023 season. They just had a couple of missed field goals. They had 2 turnovers on downs late in that second half as they were trying to convert. It just wasn't a pretty game for Oregon. But then you look at what Boise State did. And Ashton Jeanty was incredible. 267 yards, 6 touchdowns, a Boise State record. I think Boise State is going to be able to score against Oregon. And I think the defense for the Ducks is going to be stout this year. But I think Boise State will score at least 2 touchdowns. And I think Oregon takes advantage in a big way, make it a statement and to show some bounce back against Boise State. I go over the total of 62.5 between the Ducks and the Broncos, expecting some points, expecting Oregon to be a little bit pissed about how last week went. I don't know if they're going to cover as a 3-score favorite because that's where I see things approaching, but I do believe we are going to see some points inside Autzen Stadium on Saturday.
All right, good. That'll be a nice one. They threw the ball really well, Dylan Gabriel. They just didn't end up putting it in the end zone. Ben, real quickly about the last minute. Other big game, we have Tennessee at NC State. NC State struggling first week. Tennessee looking really good.
Yeah, really, really good did Tennessee, but this is a big spot for 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗡. And again, I'm not going to overreact to NC State's poor performance against Western Carolina. And it was poor. They trailed in that game. They came nowhere close to covering as a 32.5-point favorite in that fourth quarter for the Wolfpack. Grayson McCall taking some lumps. Jordan Waters, the Duke transfer, wasn't great in the backfield as well until the final 2 possessions. I do think the game is much closer than the 7.5-point spread. NC State is sound offensively under Dave Doran. That's going to be the key, slowing down not just 𝗟𝗓𝗡𝗡, but Dylan Sampson, who had more than 120 yards last week, Bobby, for Tennessee, and 3 rushing scores against Chattanooga.
Well, Ben, we appreciate your time, sir. I know you're one of the busiest guys. You just hopped off your show. You hopped on here with us. Hopefully you'll want to continue to make some time for us weekly. And you're one of my favorites, sir. Check him out, please. Ben Stevens does a great job on Sports Grid Radio over on XM. Thanks for the time today, Ben.
Guys, appreciate you having me. Looking forward to the rest of the season.
All right, coming up, we'll wrap up the show, give you our parting thoughts here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
They're off in the Kentucky Derby as Authentic takes them around the far turn. Tis the Laws making his move now, and they're into the stretch. These two stride for stride. Authentic, tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
Wrapping up the show here, Schleiks, that was your first time experiencing Ben Stevens. I've gotten a chance to work with him, on Thursdays and Fridays over the last couple of years. One of the most knowledgeable guys you're going to find, gives great lines. The numbers he recites, it is truly remarkable. So, folks, I always say, go check him out on Sports Grid. I don't even know. I always thought he was reading something and now doing stuff when you can see forward facing. His knowledge is impeccable. His memory is second to none.
Yeah, I mean, first off, when he's making these decisions about betting, you got to know the numbers and where you want to go, because I, as a fan, just literally take what I see on the field and then try to apply it to these numbers, and I don't even know what they mean all the time. So, one, very, very knowledgeable. 2, loves Big Ten football. Great to have him on the show. Can't wait to have him back.
It's going to be tremendous. All right, we last about a minute and a half here, Schleiks. Thoughts going into Thursday, and we're going to have a little something tomorrow. Little Tim Walton action. He does a thoughtful Thursday every week, puts together a little wrap for the folks, for the guys out there. So we'll try to get that every week lined up for you. It's really great stuff, developing young men as well as developing football players. So excited for that. But kind of your thoughts here as we take off the show and putting the big can of polish on it, last day of actual practice.
Yeah, I mean, for them, just have a great Thursday practice. We talked about, this is, I was there yesterday. James let me talk to the guys. Hey, man, though it's Thursday and though it's a fast Thursday, hold everybody accountable. You remember it, Bob, we were coming down here on thumping, man. We were still in shells. We had shoulder pads on. Now they go to spiders. You want Thursdays to feel like it's the game because you're taking all the corrections from Tuesday and Wednesday and you're applying them, and we're on our own field going. And Coach Haycock and Fickle, it was full tilt, man. So, but that's the approach. That's the mindset that you got to have as you prepare for these games. And they know it, man. Leave no doubt. Take them out. It doesn't matter how you do it, right? Ryan Day talked about it today, even on the radio. How do you spell fun? W-I-N. It's a party at the ball. Everybody's invited. Let's have a great Thursday practice.
The fun is in the winning, Schleiks, and it's always been the case. The fun's in the grind. The fun is in the process. be process oriented, and things generally work out. It's Bill Belichick, Parcells, you hear Urban, you hear Tress. Now Ryan Day espousing the same thing. You know why they espouse it? Because it is true. And if it wasn't, then you know what? People wouldn't be doing it, but it works. All right, folks, we're here. We've reached the conclusion of today's show. We appreciate it. Big show for you tomorrow. Stay locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.